Hello students, how are you all? Feeling good? Feeling great? So I welcome you all to the first class for drafting, and today's class we are going to talk about the general principles of drafting. I mean the basic principles which we have just gone through the first session, if we were talking about the basic principles which we'll be covering in your exams for up to 9 to 10 marks. So in this class we'll be covering the basic drafting provisions. So generally these provisions are not that much difficult, but they are a part of our daily life which we used to follow. And one more thing which came to my mind, one of the students said, sir, what are you doing this? What does this headphone basically works for? Are you listening to some songs? You are enjoying at your part and we people are studying over here. This is not fair. So my dear student, this is all about, it's a mic basically in which I used to speak. Okay? So it's not about that I'm enjoying at my end and you people are studying. I'm also studying with you people. So apart from this drafting, I forgot to mention one of the most important points of drafting. That drafting basically increases the way of presentation, that how you write an exam. That is also considered to be one of the most important points in order to score more marks. Drafting is going to give you more marks over here in the drafting as well as it is going to increase your presentation skills for other exams. Okay. So today, in today's session, we are going to learn about the drafting. We'll learn that what is drafting. Sir, we know that what is drafting. Okay, can you please tell me what is drafting then? So preparing a preliminary version is drafting. Okay. If examiner asks for, please explain the term drafting in 5 marks. What you will write over there? What are you going to write? Drafting is preparation of a preliminary version, just like that. Just like the examples which I have given you in the last class itself, that you have prepared an application letter, either that will get accepted or either that will get rejected. So that is not okay. And after that, most of you have seen. How many of you see? Basically watch that Bollywood kind of movies, the oldies one. Oh, sir, come on! If you will have been watching classes and watching such kind of Bollywood movies, then we would have been preferring classes in Hindi, not in English. Okay, great. So what happens generally is that, so as we were discussing about, that preparation of that application for leave, there can be another example related to that. Drafting is preparation of that preliminary part. So let us suppose a hero or an actor is going to propose a girl and he finally gives that girl a love letter. And what is that love letter all about? That love letter is all about that preliminary draft. And now the whole thing is now dependent upon that girl, whether she will say yes or whether she will say no. Now up to that whether she will be giving her consent or whether she will be declining the offer. So up to that part, what is that? That is a draft. Okay, but these things are not meant to be mentioned in exams. These things are over there just for your clarification. So we will learn that what is drafting. Apart from that, we will learn what is conveyancing. It's not convincing, it's conveyancing. Conveyancing is what you have heard about in transfer of property. After that, we are going to learn about the difference between both of them. That what is the difference between drafting and conveyancing. After that, we are going to learn about some of the general provisions. That what are going to be the general provisions. After that, we will learn some do's and don'ts. What are the things which needs to be done in drafting? What are the things which needs to be done, which needs to be followed in drafting? Whereas, what are the things which needs to be avoided in drafting? Just like that, things to be done at your home, things to be done in exam, there are some clarifications, there are some guidelines, right? Exactly, just like that. There are some things which need to be done and there are some things which needs to be avoided while writing, while preparing, while doing drafting. Okay? After that, next is clarity. This is basically aids of clarity, accuracy, word and expressions. So this is also a point which you have already studied into your executive levels, general and commercial laws, right? There was a point, okay, once we'll be there at the study material itself, I'll tell you that from where you have studied, from which part you have studied this part, so you people already know this really very well. And apart from this, there are some legal requirements. There are some legal requirements relating to the drafting. So, as far as I am concerned, we are going to cover this whole part into 2 classes. I have set a target for only 1 class, but it's okay. It's okay. So, we are going to cover them into 2 classes, okay? That will not be an issue. So, should we start now? So, drafting, as you know that a company needs to enter into various kind of agreements and deeds, and parties execute themselves. Exactly, na? That is the criteria, role of company secretary, right? Hope you know that, na? How many of you forget your last class? I mean, come on, that was the first class, yeah? There was nothing like that we have studied such kind of relevant thing. Anyways, so if in paper, if an exam question comes, what is drafting? Now, what you need to write down is exactly the language which I am using over here. You have to just copy that and paste it over here in order to score good marks. My dear student, whatever you mention over there, that requires some significance, that requires a particular line. And examiner looks for such kind of lines in examination in spite of looking at the whole paragraph. Okay? So, drafting may be defined as synthesis of law and fact in language form. Okay, now the question arises in your mind, sir, what is this synthesis? Synthesis means combination. Don't worry, there will be a lot of words. We'll be discussing each and every word with you. I know that really very well that I have a bad habit of telling the meanings of the words in the classroom, but still I am going to do that for you. So, basically what happens, let us check in rent agreement. Let us suppose if we are there making a rent agreement, we are drafting a rent agreement, and there are 2 parties, A and B. Okay? A is the landlord, B is the tenant. Okay? So, what happens? There are some facts. What are the facts? Facts are related to rent. Facts are related to security deposit, right? And what happens later on? There are some laws applicable. Laws applicable, sir. Payment of stamp duty. If you are getting your rent agreement certified, if you want to get your rent agreement registered, you have to pay stamp duty. So what is this? These are facts. And these are laws. So where does the rent agreement basically comprises of both of the things? It includes facts, it includes laws as well. It includes both the things, right? So that is what people were basically looking for. So he wants to say that drafting means a combination of law and facts in the language form. So this rent agreement, how it is prepared? Is it prepared orally? No, it is not prepared orally. We used to prepare this only in a language form or in a written form. Right? It is totally written. Got it? Should we go ahead? Okay. How many of you have written this? My dear students, you can pause it for the while. Meanwhile, we'll catch you on the next page. Okay, if you people have not written that, it's okay. You can note it down. This is the exact language which you have to use in examination. So make sure that you don't write anything else apart from this. Otherwise, marks. There are 100 reasons for deducting a marks. 100 reasons. But for giving a marks, that person is just looking for a single line. This is this line. That's it. Okay? So should we go ahead? Okay. Then let's go ahead. So, now he says, in other words, legal drafting is crystallization of expressions in a definite form of legal rights, duties, functions, and privileges. So what he's talking about is saying that whatever the expressions of the parties, whatever the intention of the parties, expression of the parties, belief of the parties, requirement of the parties, that should be formed, that should be laid down in a definite format. And what does that belong to? That belongs to all the legal rights, duties, functions and privileges. Okay. And after that, example, rent agreement. That what happens generally in a rent agreement, I mean, some of the duties, functions are given to the tenant itself. That what is the duty of tenant now? That he will pay a monthly rent to the landlord or landlady, whatever the person is, whomsoever the person is concerned. What is there? I mean, there are some functions, some duties of a tenant, that being a tenant, I am going to pay rent to my landlord. Okay? Now comes the line which is, considered to be one of the good lines. Drafting is an art of preparing legal documents. Legal documents, sir, what does that mean? Seriously? Legal documents means commercial documents. Seriously, how can you people forget here? Example, deeds, agreements, contracts, etc. What we have learned into the first class here, how can you people forget? If you are going to forget that the very first class, if you still think that was not relevant, that was basically a background of whatever we are going to cover into the next class itself. It's okay, no issues. So, law says drafting is of no use. Just make sure this can be one of the questions into your comment part, that drafting is of no use if the balance between facts and what else is included? Okay, so you forgot it? Okay, check this. What are the two things which are included? Law and facts. Right? So law and facts. Law says drafting is of no use, sir, if the balance between facts and law is unacceptable. If the balance between law and facts is unacceptable, either you have mentioned all the facts, but you have not done anything related to law. Let us suppose you have mentioned facts. Okay, but you have not mentioned law. Or not complied law properly. You have not complied properly. You have not complied it properly. You have mentioned facts. You have mentioned facts up to 100%, let us suppose. Then what will happen, sir? This drafting will be of no use. This is worthless. Let us suppose I'm mentioning all the facts related to the rent agreement. That is, this much is going to be the rent, this much is going to be the property measurement, this is going to be the address, sir, this is going to be, the security deposit, the per month rent, this is going to be the maintenance charges, blah, blah, blah. I have written each and everything. But when it comes to the payment of stamp duty, what I have done, I have made it an understamped. I have not paid stamp duty. I have not complied with law. Law says drafting is totally of no use, sir. What is drafting? Drafting is basically a combination of law plus facts. If you have done any of the mistakes in these two things, that will be of no use. Okay? That is of no use. You cannot consider that as a good drafting. You cannot make it, or you cannot say that this drafting is legible, that this drafting is feasible, or this drafting can be used further. Okay? So should we go ahead? Are you people done with this? My dear students, are you done? Hope all of you have done these kind of things. Not yet? How many of you have noted? Let's go ahead. Okay. So basically, that in order to carry out drafting, first of all, the drafting is not an automation process. It's not just like, it will be done on its own motion. There should be a person who is going to do drafting for you. There should be a person, that can be a company secretary, that can be an advocate, that can be any other person who is going to do drafting for you. So, law says drafting. Not law actually, this is all about our institute says that drafting requires skills of draftsman. Who is draftsman? Draftsman is the person who is doing drafting for you. Let us suppose there are two parties, P and Q. P and Q want to enter into a rent agreement. Rent agreement, for this they approach D. D is a company secretary. What he is working as, he'll be doing drafting for them. The person who makes drafting, we call him as draftsman. Either that can be a woman, but we generally call them a draftsman. Draftsman. After that, knowledge presentation. Knowledge presentation should be there. That you are presenting, you should present it in a proper format. Proper knowledge of facts should be there. Proper knowledge of each and every complying law should be there. Okay? I know it seems to be a little bit boring. Should I include some examples? Okay. Just do one thing. Just note down this. After that, we are going to make, we are going to discuss something very interesting. Okay? So, knowledge presentation, apart from that, rights and duties of parties. Mutual understanding and obligations. Obligations, what does that obligation mean? Obligation means duties. Okay, so basically drafting requires the skills of draftsman. Being the person who's making this rent agreement. Let us suppose I am a person who's making this rent agreement. So basically, I should be totally equipped with knowledge. I should be knowledgeable. I need to be a knowledgeable person for this. Okay, and after that, I need to, be aware about the rights and duties of person. That what are the duties of a landlord and what are going to be the duties of a tenant. I should be aware about that. I need to be careful about the mutual understanding of parties. That what is their mutual understanding about the time period of tenancy, the time period of this rent agreement, how much for how much time period this rent agreement has been entered into. What will be the duties of parties in case, let us suppose that in case of rent and repairs. In case of rent and repairs, generally what happens? If you are there in case of rent and repairs, if something goes out and if something turns out to be, waste. If there's a tap and the tap stops working, okay? Now, who is going to bear the expenses for the tap? Either that will be borne by the landlord or that is going to be borne by the tenant itself. So, what are the obligations? What are the duties? There should be a person who used to clean the house all the time. On a daily basis. It's okay, it's not all the time. It's not obviously our office that everybody used to, sweep like this. So, it's all about that there should be a person who used to clean the house. Who is going to pay for the maintenance of the house? It will be whose duty? Which person is, it's whose obligation, who is going to pay for that maintenance of the house? So, being a draftsman, I should be aware of all the relevant things. Okay? So, should we go ahead? When it comes to drafting, law says whenever it asks you for essence, there are basically three things in drafting. Drafting is generally the essence is obtaining legal consultancy. For obtaining legal consultancy, drafting is required. For carrying out document departmentally. For carrying out document departmentally, drafting is required. Let us suppose you are there into a shares department, or you are there into secretarial department, or else you are there handling multiple departments. Suddenly you become the HOD, and let us suppose that you have sent in document and you don't know about the drafting, how that can be done. I mean, a person who is a qualified company secretary sitting into an MNC, and from that person, this is much as expected that that person is going to draft the document properly. Okay. Apart from that, for interpretation of documents. For interpretation of documents. Okay? For interpretation of documents. So should we go ahead? Should we go ahead? This is basically the essence. If an exam is asked for essence or the requirements, what are the stages on which drafting is required? Sir, for obtaining legal consultancy, it is required. For carrying out document departmentally, let us suppose if you are in a company and you are there in secretarial department or legal department, okay? And you have prepared a document. Now this document will be there visited with marketing department because there's a case with marketing team. There's a person who has filed a case against our company just because of the flaws on the marketing part. I mean, the marketing team has not done something or has done something just because of which that person has filed a case. Or else, there can be something related to bad debts. I mean, that can be something related to accounts. So you are going to send that document to accounts that we have a case pending and these are the facts and how you are going to present them. It's not about writing, anything. Okay? So you need to present them carefully. That should be done in drafting itself. For interpretation of documents, that how you need to interpret documents. Once I'm there, how many of you have studied about or have seen BEAR Act? Have you seen BEAR Act? Not seen BEAR Act? Okay, then you can simply do one thing. Then you can go to Companies Act PDF. Go for it and Google it. Not right now, not right now. You can Google it, you will get the BEAR Act. Okay, you will get the BEAR Act. Try to understand that. Try to understand the interpretation. Okay, that is something which we call as drafting. That is also a kind of drafting. Preparing an act is also a drafting. That is statutory drafting. Okay, anyways, let's go ahead. Let's discuss about the other things as well. So, the next topic is conveyancing. So, the next topic is all about conveyancing. So, what is conveyancing now? Okay, what is drafting? Have you understood each and everything related to drafting now? Merely, what is drafting? Drafting is a combination of law plus facts into a language form. That is one of the most easiest, definition which we used to prefer. That if somebody is going to ask you, sir, what is drafting? Drafting is basically a combination of facts plus law. And what is conveyancing? Conveyancing is basically drafting plus transfer of property. That's it. As simple as that. Drafting plus transfer of property is conveyancing. Really? It's too easy. No, it's not that much easy actually. In your study material, it has written somewhere so many times that it relates to immovable property, but later on it includes movable property as well. So it generally talks about both kind of properties. It means you can transfer both of the properties that can be immovable, that can be movable as well. So if you are going to write an exam, you are going to write that art of drafting. It's an art of drafting deeds and documents whereby any interest in land What is land? Land is an immovable property. Look at the study material, you'll find it changing. You'll find it, moving ahead with the stream or moving ahead with the flow. First, he'll talk about immovable, then he'll talk about movable. What is land? Land is an immovable property. Land is an immovable property. Okay? for transferring any interest in land and any interest in land which is transferred by one person to another. I mean, the interest in land has been transferred from A to B. Okay? So the interest has been transferred or the right has been transferred, whatever you want to include. Okay? And conveyancing also includes, my dear students, it includes drafting of commercial documents. Whenever there's a scenario, whenever it comes into picture for transferring of property, it will become convincing. Otherwise, that is drafting. Just make sure it's a hard and fast rule that whenever it comes from transferring any property itself, it talks about transferring of any property, then that means that is for sure, that is for 100% sure, that is convincing. Okay, that is convincing. Did you got it? And after that, there are some things which are written into your study material which relates to England. Well, that is not relevant. I mean, what we should do with it, what we are going to do with England. And that is also related to some kind of ancient times. Should we go ahead? Okay, apart from this, there are some more lines which are related to conveyancing. It's conveyancing is an act of transfer of property from one person to another. Transfer of property from one person to another, that is what we call as transferring. Conveyancing. Okay? And now here, one of the paragraph ends. Here it says property movable and immovable. It says both of the properties can be considered. Earlier it says that it should be only immovable property, but later on our institute corrected that and said that both kind of properties should be included in conveyancing. I mean, if you are transferring the property itself, then it will be conveyancing for sure. Okay? Now, let's come to the difference between about drafting and conveyancing. Now let's study about the difference. Let me take myself over here. Have you written each and everything? Not written everything? Koई बात नहीं. It's okay. I used to speak Hindi sometimes and hope you'll understand that. You know a little bit of Hindi, that for sure. You people are residing in India and even our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, he used to promote Hindi all the time, right? Otherwise, India would have been there at the second highest place on which English has been dragged into their minds. And we basically live into a society where English is not just a language, it's knowledge. People think that a person who can speak English, he's a knowledgeable person. They don't know that just merely by working in a BPO or just learning some kind of courses, you can learn English. But speaking English is not about, that it's just a language. It's not knowledge. Okay? Knowledge is what you people are getting. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about drafting. Law says these things are almost same. There's a difference of transfer of property itself. But we cannot never use them interchangeably. You cannot use conveyancing on place of drafting and you cannot use drafting on place of conveyancing. So, drafting is preparation of documents. Drafting is preparation of documents. And conveyancing gives stress on documentation. It gives stress on documentation. Which documentation? Which kind of documentation? Documentation which is concerned with transfer of property from one person to another. Okay? Now here comes a word, document. You know what happened once? In examination there was a question. What do you understand by the term document? What does it mean by the document? What do you understand by the, write a short note on document. You are talking about documentation. What is documentation, sir? What is documentation? And that scenario when we used to talk about a lot of times about documentation. What is documentation? When examiners say, what is documentation? And we are like, just like this. We don't know. After that, we just keep on thinking about that. Anyhow, I need to write something about, but that writing, anything writing, that all will go into it. That will be of no use. What you need to write over there is, when it comes to document, as per General Clauses Act 1897, law says any matter written on, expressed or described by substance of letters, figures or marks which are intended to be used for purpose of recording matter. Law says, sir, as per General Clauses Act, I mean that document word has been defined in General Clauses Act 1897. Law says any matter which has been written on express, that has been expressed, that has been conveyed either orally or written, and has been described by any substance. How it is described? It has been described using letters, figures, marks. Letters, figures or marks. Whatever that has been used doesn't matter. So that has been described, described or that has been mentioned using letters, figures or marks which are intended and which are for which the purposes. What is the purpose? Purpose is recording that matter. That can be anything. That can be rent agreement. That can be service agreement. That can be power of attorney. That can be anything else. Okay? So that is what we call as a document. Got it? Got it or not? Okay, all of you can write down right now. Done? I know they are definitions, they are a little bit like boring, huh? So done? Should we go ahead? My dear students, should we go ahead? Let me put myself over here. So I'm here sitting itself. You know that I can see your phones over there. Oh sir, really, that's really funny, but we don't think so that we even feel like that we are laughing. Oh really? No issues, it's okay. That happens literally. Sometimes even teachers used to crack jokes which are totally nonsense. Are you getting what I meant to say? Hope everybody here is focusing on the class itself. Let's go ahead. Okay? Let's go ahead. Let's talk about. So now the term document. This was also defined in Companies Act 1956. Institute still follows the definition for the document which has been mentioned in Companies Act 1956. But we are going to consider the definition which is there in Companies Act 2013. And let me tell you all the definitions in Companies Act. Whenever you are going to write any definition, definitions are always there in section number 2. Okay? So in the exam itself, if you are going to write any of the definitions, just do not forget all the definitions in Companies Act are there invested with section number 2 itself. Okay? So, as per Companies Act, document means any summon. You know summon? Summon which is issued by court itself. Then let's call that person, that is a summon which is issued by court during a legal proceeding. Summon, notice. Notice, of course, all of us know about the income tax notices. Requisitions. What is requisition? Requisition means request or order, declaration, form and register. Form and register. Issue, sent, kept or need to be maintained, which are need to be maintained as per provisions of this Act. As per provisions of this Act. Whether in paper or in electronic form. I mean, whatever the documents are there in Companies Act, as per the, requirements of Companies Act, whatever you study, whatever you need, that there are some documents which are needed over there, then such kind of documents can be kept either in hard copy, just like your paper, just like your notebook which you are using, or that can be kept in electronic form as well. They need a timestamp. Timestamp is generally, there is something like that. Okay, once we will be there at the topic itself, I am going to explain you that. Okay? Done? Should we go ahead? Should we go ahead and complete our difference between, which is going on between drafting and convincing still at present? So in drafting concept is wider. Concept is wider. Here concept is narrower. After that, drafting basically relates to every document. Drafting relates to every document. It relates to conveyance only. Okay? Drafting basically is concerned with every document, but whereas convincing is related to conveyance only. When does this come into picture? This came into picture only when there is a transfer of property. And whenever there is a transfer of property, sir, you need to buy Indian stamp. You need to consider Indian Stamp Act 1899. That means government is willing to get something for you. There should be an amount of stamp duty. So this is all about the difference between drafting and convincing. Sir, there are some examples also. Oh, really? It's okay. I'm going to consider them for you. It's okay. In the very next point, you can also include two kinds of examples. Should we go ahead? Okay, let's go. In drafting, you can actually mention example, service agreement, rent agreement, or whatever you want to consider. Here you can mention example, sale deed. Example, sale deed, mortgage deed. Okay? So here you can mention such kind of things as well. After that, we are going to discuss about what is the difference between contract and conveyance. Oh no, sir. Sir, you know that, we are going to discuss about the difference between contract and conveyance, yes? Okay, just do one thing. Let's discuss about that topic, as soon as possible. Just do that. So, let's move ahead. It's all about contract. It's all about conveyance. Contract and conveyance. So this is all about, they have been mentioned in the study material itself using some paragraphs. They are in paragraph form. So what I have done, I have, put some points from there. We have summarized that language, and the difference between is as follows. Contract is an agreement which is enforceable by law. Which is enforceable by law. How a contract is formed, as we all know that really very well. It's an agreement plus enforceable by law. Enforceable by law. Hope you people are not getting bored. You are getting bored. Okay, so let's do one thing. I'm going to explain something very interesting, like related to a girl and a boy. Should I explain that? Okay, I'll explain it. Just give me a moment then. And what is convincing? Convincing is basically drafting plus transfer of property. Which kind of property? Sir, that can be both kind of property. I mean movable and immovable. Movable and immovable. That can be both kind of property. Okay, done. Should we go ahead? So what is there is basically one of the things which are related to contract, which generally most of the authors in market used to prefer, but our institute never gives you a background of contract. So let me give you a very interesting example that will be just turn out to be a stress burner for you. So let us suppose there's a boy. Who is he? He is a boy. Boy, approaches a girl. The boy goes with an offer or proposal. We call it as an offer or proposal, right? My dear students, are you there? I thought your people are getting bored. That's why I use an example. You are not getting bored? Okay, let's leave it then. Okay, you want me to consider that? Okay. Hope, but this is going to be the first and last time in the first class itself. After that, later on, we can include some more examples. So, offer and proposal. Now, the girl, what she will say? Either she is going to accept the offer, or either she is going to reject the offer. I mean, if she is going to reject, the picture will end over here, right? Now, offer plus acceptance. What that will become? That will become a promise. What kind of promise? Boy is going to give a promise that, baby, that is for sure. We'll be going shopping every weekend. We'll be going for movies. We'll be going for dinner. How about I'll buy you an iPhone 7, 8, 9, whatever the latest versions are going to be. And the girl is going to promise that, boy, yeah, definitely, I'll be there with you throughout your life, blah, blah, blah. And for the promise, for boy is going to gift iPhone. Right? That requires some consideration, sir. What is consideration? Quid pro quo, something in return. You are doing a promise, you will be getting something in return. So promise plus consideration. After some conditions, promise plus consideration, it becomes an agreement. Agreement. Now both of them become girlfriend boyfriend. Okay? So now, later on, what happens? Now they get married. Which is plus enforceable by law. Now they get married and now it becomes a contract, sir. Okay, just tell me a simple thing. Well, if a girlfriend, boyfriend gets separated, they get a breakup, okay, will that court be involved? Will that laws be involved? No. Exactly what he's talking about. He's telling you that's in an agreement. Agreement is not enforceable by law, sir. Agreement is not enforceable by law. That girlfriend-boyfriend relation is not enforceable by law, sir. Okay, sir, now they got married. Now who are they? They are husband-wives. They are husband-wives. Husband-wife, if they get separated, will the court be involved? Will the laws will be applied? Yes, definitely they are going to be applied. They will be applied. Okay, so this was all about. It's okay if you think that, this is a waste, ignore it. That was just to, brush up your mind if you people are thinking that, lectures going a little bit more. So, this is where we were actually standing. So, contract is all about agreement enforceable by law. Agreement plus enforceable by law becomes a contract. But when it comes to convincing, it's totally about drafting plus transfer of property. Now, let's move ahead. In contract, what generally happens in contract, there are some reciprocal promises. Reciprocal promises are, let us suppose I promise you that I'll be giving you a class daily and you are promising me, that is for sure, sir, that we'll be coming to your class daily. If you will be given a class daily, will be coming to your class daily. I have made a promise that I'll be giving a class daily, and you have made a promise that you will be coming to attend the class daily. So these are a set of reciprocal promises. Promise in exchange of promise. These are reciprocal promises. What happens over here? It happens in contract when it comes to conveyancing. In conveyancing, are there any promises? There can be a promise, but there is no reciprocal promise. No reciprocal promise. Whenever there is a contract, it creates right of action. It creates right of action. Whenever there is a conveyancing, it alters the existing rights. Alters the existing rights? Sir, we didn't get that. Okay. Let us suppose there is a property. A has a property. A has a property and A sold that property to B. So whatever the ownership rights which were vested with A has been now transferred to B, right? Whatever the ownership rights, whatever the rights of enjoyment, rights of easement, rights of passage, right to light, electricity, whatever the scenarios, whatever the things which were there, which were the rights of the A, has now been passed to B. Am I right? Am I right? Whatever the rights, whatever the ownership rights they have been transferred. So, their rights, these are not new. They are already existing rights. They were already existing, na? And they have just been transferred. They have just been altered. That is the reason. Okay? Should we go ahead now? Apart from this, contract is governed by Indian Contract Act. Indian Contract Act 1872. Whereas conveyancing is governed by Transfer of Property Act. Transfer of Property Act 1882. Okay? So this was all about today's class. Let's do one thing. Let's revise whatever the classes which we have covered today itself. Should we revise it? Because it's really important to revise whatever we have studied in the classroom. Let's go ahead. Let's revise it. Huh? So we'll be giving a total of 10 minutes for the revision itself. Okay? And we'll try our best to wrap up this chapter into the next classroom. Okay? So let's go ahead. Let's take from where we have basically started this chapter. Okay. So here it is from where we have basically started this chapter. It's all about drafting. Law says drafting is defined as a combination of law plus facts. Let us suppose there is a rent agreement. There are some laws, there are some facts. Facts may be related to rent and security. Whereas laws are related to laws applicable. That can be Rent Control Act, that can be payment of stamp duty, that can be other things as well. Okay? So that is basically a combination of law and facts in a language form. That means in a written form. In other words, legal drafting is basically crystallization. Crystallization means transformation, or that can be conversion of expressions. Just give me a moment. Now it's fine. This crystallization of expressions of the intention of parties or whatever the parties intend to do or whatever the parties are willing to do in a definite form. What kind of definite form? In a form, I mean in a proper format of what? Of legal rights, duties, functions or privileges. As we were talking about the rent agreement, let us suppose, there are some rights, there are some duties of tenant as well as landlord. There are some functions which needs to be performed. There are some privileges. Privileges, when it comes to privileges, okay, some of the students have a doubt related to privileges. So, the right of reentry. Have you heard about that? Let us suppose that you have given your home on rent to me, and on a specified time I need to vacate that home, right? I should vacate that. So now the thing which came to my mind is I need to vacate that home. That is for sure. So law says, sir, if you have to vacate that, the right of re-entry is the first privilege with the owner itself. By the time I am going to vacate the house on which and there is a tenant, the right of re-entry is the privilege of the owner itself, only the owner. Drafting is an art of preparing what? All the legal documents, deeds, agreements, contracts. Contracts, we have one more word for contracts, but we call it as convenience. Drafting is of no use, sir, if there is no balance between facts and laws. If that balance is unacceptable, not working, not acceptable, then drafting is of no use. Your balance should be maintained properly. Otherwise, just like the balance between two feet, whenever we used to walk, there should be a proper balance. Otherwise, a person might fall just like that. So drafting basically requires skills of draftsman, a person who is basically doing drafting. There's an example, P and Q want to enter into a rent agreement. They approach D. D is a company secretary and he basically does drafting for them. A person who does drafting, we call him as draftsman. He should have knowledge of presentation. Rights and duties of parties should be there in his mind, that what are the rights of the landlord, what are going to be the rights of the tenant as well, what are going to be the obligations, what are going to be the duties, what is the mutual understanding upon both of them, I mean what is the amount of security, moreover for how much time period this is going to be there, either this is going to be for a period of 1 year or either this is going to be on a year-to-year basis. So basically, whenever it comes in examination for essence, there are only 3 points and all are equal in rank. All are equal in rank, okay? So, obtaining legal consultancy, for obtaining legal consultancy, drafting is required, sir. If you are going to be in practice in future, definitely, if your client is going to ask you for legal consultancy, he don't need any document which is not properly drafted. Drafting for carrying out document departmentally. Let us suppose you will be hired in an MNC and what happens over there, the secretarial and legal department, there is a case which is related to marketing. So law says that document will be carried forward, the document will be sent to many of the departments itself. So that at that part, drafting is also going to work. For interpretation of documents, I mean Companies Act PDF, do not forget to check this act at once. Let's go ahead then. Conveyancing is all about drafting plus transfer of property. So transfer of property, here it says land. Art of drafting deeds and documents, whereby any interest in land or land, what is land? Land is an immovable property which is transferred from one person to another. Let us suppose A has transferred his interest in a land to B and includes drafting of commercial documents. Conveyancing is an act of transferring of property from one person to another. Which kind of property? Now here our institute modifies the same and says movable and immovable, both kind of properties. Drafting is preparation of documents. Of course, we all know that. And conveyancing is giving stress on documentation concerned with transfer of property from one person to another. So which kind of property? Both kind of properties. That can be movable, that can be immovable as well. So here I am now. Okay. So after that, what do we understand by the term document? Law says, sir, as per General Clauses Act, any matter which has been written or expressed or described. How it is described? It has been described by letters, figures or marks. Intended to be used for which purpose? Sir, for recording matter. For recording a particular matter. After that, let's go ahead. What is a document? Document was defined there in Companies Act 1996, but we have considered the definition which is there in Companies Act 2013. So whatever there's a summon which is basically issued by a court itself, a notice which is issued by many of the government departments, or moreover a document can be for the intercompany works, the works which need to be carried out within the company. Requisition means a request, order, declaration, and form, registered, issued, sent or need to be maintained as per the provisions of this act. This act means Companies Act 2013, that can be whether in paper form, that means in hard copy, or that can be in electronic form as well. Okay? So drafting is, the concept of drafting is wider, whereas the conveyancing is narrower. The concept of drafting is very much wider, it's very much big. But whereas it comes to drafting, because drafting is a wider concept, whereas conveyancing is a narrower concept. Reason, because conveyancing covers only those matters which are related to transfer of property. Okay? Whereas it relates to every document, and now you people know what is the definition of a document. So example, service agreement. Example, sale deed, mortgage deed. Contract. Agreement enforceable by law. Any agreement which is enforceable by law is contract. Conveyance is drafting plus transfer of property. That can be movable, can be immovable as well. Okay, let's go ahead. Now this is the example with many of the students think, okay, that was just for fun, but anyways it's okay. It's a part of Indian Contract Act, where what I was saying over here is a boy went to a girl for offer a proposal. Now the girl accepts, the girl gives an acceptance. Now it is converted into a promise that baby, I'm never going to leave you. Now that baby demands some gift, that is for consideration, quid pro quo, something in return. Something in return. After that, there comes an agreement. Agreement means a relation has been developed as a girlfriend, boyfriend. And now if the breakup happens, my dear students, nothing related to law will be applied. After that, they got married. Now it is enforceable by law. Husband, wives and contracts. Now with the husband and wife, they got separated. If they got separated, then just tell me, will the law be applied? Yes, sir, contract is enforceable by law. It is enforceable by law, whereas an agreement is. Contract is a reciprocal promise. In contract, there are reciprocal promises. A gives some promises to B, B promises something to A in return. Whereas in conveyancing, there are no reciprocal promises. Contract creates basically right of action. Creates right. Let us suppose that can be for entering into joint venture. Entering into joint venture. Okay, so that basically creates some new rights. Whereas conveyancing alters the existing rights. Earlier, the existing rights were vested with A. Now they will be transferred to B. Sir, what were they? They were ownership rights. They were existing. They were not new. That land was already there. Okay. The ownership has been transferred. That means the rights have been altered. So this is governed by the provisions of Indian Contract Act 1872. And now, the conveyancing is governed by Transfer of Property Act 1882. So that's all from our side. The class for today has been ended. My dear students, just keep smiling and see you in the next class. And feel free to ask whatever the kind of doubts which you have in your mind. Never feel shy to raise any kind of doubts, whatever the type of doubts or the kind of doubt which you people are going to place. Be rest assured, I'm not going to share them on my Facebook account. Okay? Yeah, exactly. So bye, take care and see you in next class.